So I'm Dave Copelan. I'm going to be your speaker for today. I'm Poly class of 1996. This is going to be really informal. I'm not a formal person. So if you guys have a question, just shout out your question. Or say, hey, stop, what was that? Or you tell me more about that, and I'll stop and tell you that. I'm going to try and talk pretty quick because I hear you guys only have half an hour for lunch. Back in the day, we had an hour. So we can take our time and eat. So I'm guessing if you mumble and talk with your mouth full with your questions, so don't worry about it. And I'll get into what I actually do after I tell you a little bit about how I actually got into it. And first and foremost, why should you listen to me? Well, I've been in your exact shoes. I've been in seats that, well, not these exact seats because I wasn't here, but seats in this general vicinity a long, long time ago, so I know what you're going through. And a lot of people would always tell me it's really important to learn from your mistakes. Well, what they didn't tell me is it's really important to learn from other people's mistakes. It's a lot less painful for you if you learn from the mistakes of other people. And you also learn from their successes too. So learn from your own mistakes, but also learn from the mistakes of others. And so I'll try to tell you about my mistakes, but also some successes along the way. So I'm going to talk about my pathway to get to where I am. Interventional radiology, which is what I do. It's a minimally invasive, it's not a surgical specialty, but for all intents and purposes, we do minimally invasive surgeries. And there's some words of wisdom. So one of my medical school professors, every time he ended a lecture, he would have words of wisdom at the end. So I thought I'd throw that in there. So my pathway, decision to become a physician, I think I made maybe a little bit early. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a doctor. My friends wanted to be Batman and Superman and firefighters, and I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. Couldn't really pronounce it, but that's what I wanted to be. And the reason was because I hurt myself a lot as a little kid. I would play football and baseball and everything up on the same fields that you're playing in. You know, Coach Hall and Coach Bierman and everyone else would be able to tell you that I was very good at getting hurt. I wasn't very good at sports, but I was very good at getting hurt at playing those sports. And so Michael Can, who is the father of David Can, who was in the class above me, so class of 1995, his dad was my orthopedic surgeon. And so anytime I would fall and break something, I would go see Dr. Can, and in 6 weeks, I would be fine. The cast would come off, and I'd be back there on the field to go break something else. And literally, I got a cast off one day, and broke the finger right next to the finger I got the cast off the next day, and was back in his office. So I pretty much put David Can through college with my medical bills to his father. But I made the decision really early, and I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. Didn't know much about it other than that's who fixed me, and I really appreciated it, and I wanted to do that for other people. And so here's a couple pictures. That's kind of how I picture myself to start this day. Don't know if you guys know what frosted mini wheats are, but years ago there was a commercial for frosted mini wheats, and they had an adult saying, "I eat it for the fiber," and then the kid would switch, and it would be a little, or the person would switch, it would be a little kid in a big white coat, wearing the parents or the adult's clothing, saying, "I eat it for the sugary coating." I still feel like that little kid in the picture. I still feel like I'm sitting there where you guys are, but I've lost a lot of hair. So my pathway after Poly. Left Poly, and I was not an academic standout at Poly. I did okay. I could read, I could write, I could count, but I was in no means Ivy League bound. By no means Ivy League bound. I had my choices. I could go Claremont colleges, USC, a bunch of different UCs, and so did the tours and decided on UC San Diego. And why did I decide on UC San Diego? It's summed up in this picture. Here's the campus. Here are the dorms. Here's the Pacific Ocean. Everything you need to know is right there. I lived on the beach in La Jolla for 4 years. It was fantastic. I got down there and said, this place is great. And the other factors were the cost. USC would have been about $50,000, $60,000 with cost of living and everything, and tuition. UCSC was $6,000 when I went there. It's probably a little more now, but it made a difference in the decision, and also the majors offered. They had 36 different biology majors. I figured, okay, I could probably find something here that works for me. So it wasn't a big ivory tower pillar of academia, but it worked for me. And I decided to be a biology major, which this is kind of the first learning point here. Very basic, very simple. I'm sure all those bubble tests you guys take, you've learned this. check the right boxes, because I went 4 years thinking I was a cell biology and biochemistry major until I got my diploma that said general biology. And I went to the registrar's office, and they said, no, you check this box, not that box. So, make sure you check the right box. That's lesson number 1. Very simple. Fisher-Price, my first lesson, check the right box. Didn't really have any negative outcomes, but it's important to pay attention to. So then, at UCSD, there's 5 different colleges. I was placed into the World Religions Humanities College. And I said, no, this must be some mistake. I want to be a doctor. Why did you put me here? And they said, well, that's where you are. Enjoy it. At the time, I was pretty upset. In retrospect, it was one of the best things that could have happened to me because it forced me to be a well-rounded candidate. If I had taken a laser line through college, being a math or science major, I would have been just like everyone else. But I went through, and I had to take 2 years of anthropology. I also got a minor in Greek history and civilization, and I got that by taking a cruise through the Greek islands with some of my friends from UCLA. So you can have fun and check off the boxes along the way. You don't have to sit there and keep your face buried in a book. You can say, hey, I can fulfill these requirements while traveling and learning in other locations. So that's a learning point there. And then the Howard Hughes Scholarship. This was the biggest stroke of luck that I think has ever happened to anyone. I liken this to winning the lottery. When I got my admissions packet, and I apologize for talking so quickly, but I want to try and get through as much as I can. When I got my admissions packet to UCSD, there was a piece of paper in there that said Howard Hughes Science Enrichment Scholarship Program for underrepresented minorities and underprivileged youth. And I said, well, it's in the admissions packet, I have to fill it out and send it back. And I did. And lo and behold, I was accepted. And as you can tell by me going through poly, I wasn't necessarily an underprivileged youth, and as you can tell by looking at me, I'm not an underrepresented minority. But when I got to the first meeting and I asked Kathy Kennedy, the person who was in charge of it, I said, why did I get this? They said, you were the only Caucasian male that applied. And so you got it, because we have to have one. So, a lesson to everyone, fill out the paperwork they send you. Because you can't win the lotto if you don't buy a ticket. So if I hadn't sent that in, I wouldn't have gotten that program. Every single door on this campus was open to me because of that. I could research in any lab I wanted, do any project I wanted, and it was funded by the Howard Hughes Scholarship Program because I sent in that piece of paper. So when you get a piece of paper and you think you may not apply, or you think it may not apply to you, fill it out, send it in, you just might win. That allowed me to publish journal articles because I had the power of the Howard Hughes Scholarship behind me. And I could call up different symposia and say, hey, I have this project, I'm a Howard Hughes Scholar, can I present it? Yes. Every time I presented, I got a stipend. So I paid my way through college because of the research that that program allowed me to do. And it's all because I filled out a paper that I just got in a packet. So that's really important. Fill stuff out. So medical school, UCLA. I got into a couple different medical schools, and once I got into USC, I withdrew from everywhere else but UCLA. I didn't want to go to Boston, I didn't want to go to New York, it's too cold. I wanted to stay in Southern California. And at USC, it would have been about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. UCLA was $6,000 a year, again. Big difference. And the learning point here is networking. So we'll address that a little bit later in the talk too, but networking is very, very, very important. I was waitlisted at UCLA. And so that's when I got myself there, but I needed help. And so I reached out to everyone I knew and said, hey, okay, let's pull on the network and figure out what we can do. Well, it so happens that my stepmother's first husband's surgeon was the girlfriend of the dean of admissions at UCLA. They didn't have the best breakup, but she leveraged that to call the dean of admissions and say, hey, there's a student on your wait list I'd like you to let in. The next day, I got a call and was let in. So that is a prime example of the power of networking. You keep those contacts and you use them when you need them. The other things with UCLA is the ranking. I targeted it because it's still a top 10 medical school in the US. It's a top 10 medical school in the world. So that's why I jumped ship from USC to UCLA. One, because I'm a Bourbon, not a Trojan, but some things you have to pay attention to, that was one. Interviews. This is something that when you get to this level, you may not have had much experience with interviewing in your professional career up until this point. And with sports that I didn't know how to play, what do? You get a coach. And so I got a coach. I didn't know how to do interviews. I knew how to learn, but I didn't know how to interview. And so I learned about interviewing, which is a subject called neurolinguistics. It's basically how individuals respond to communication. And that was very, very important. So when you're faced with something that you don't have experience with, the one thing, and one of the many things you have coming out of Poly, is the ability to learn. You're a professional student, so learn about what you're going to be faced with, and then you'll be a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident when you go into it. And practice. I went up and had a interview coach for 16 weeks in Irvine. I drove from San Diego to Irvine once a week for 16 weeks to practice interviews with different people that I didn't know, so that when I got to these interviews in medical school, I was comfortable. So keep that in mind if you ever need to go that. Orthopedic surgery versus radiology, work-life balance decision. Up until the very last week, I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. All the research I did was in cartilage tissue bioengineering, and I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. And then I realized, hey, I want a better work-life balance. How can I spin what I've researched into a different career? And it was crunch time. It was up towards the end of the application process. And everything I did in my research happened to use radiology for 3D modeling of all the joints and the bones. And I said, oh, well, radiology has a fantastic work-life balance. And I enjoyed looking at all those images throughout the whole research process, so I chose radiology. Internship. Scripps Mercy down in San Diego. Why did I choose that? Well, location. And it was a top tier. It was, I think, 1 or 2 in the nation at the time. I was deciding between Scripps Mercy and Mayo Clinic Scottsdale. That was if I remember correctly, 1 and 2 internships in the country, and I chose Scripps Mercy, 1, because I didn't have to wear a tie, so I hate wearing ties, and 2, because it was in San Diego, and they just actually put out a study this last week that the mental health of interns and physicians is correlated with where they do their training and if they're happy during their training. And in San Diego, I could surf before going to work, surf after coming back from work. It was sunny outside. I wasn't buried in the snow and the rain. And so I was happy going to work. And that was something that you should take into account too, the work-life balance. And then residency and fellowship, I wanted a good mixture of training, both private side and county side. And so I picked USC, and I matched there luckily. And so I got the training at the county side where we did trauma, and then we also had a private hospital where we deal with a lot of the oncology and the cancer. So it was a good mix of the two. So coming out of residency and fellowship, I went to private practice in San Diego because I thought I wanted to do 100% of what I was trained to do. I wanted to do high-level stuff, I wanted to do fancy, cool stuff, and then after about 6 months of doing that, I realized this wasn't what I wanted to do. I was working 90-hour weeks, which is more than 2 full-time jobs. Wasn't home to see my wife. Didn't get to surf at all in the 6 months I was in San Diego for the first half of my job. And it was a horrible, horrible work-life balance. I was doing horrendously stressful cases, and that wasn't fun. And here's the network again. One of my friends from residency and fellowship called me and said, hey, I hear you're not super happy down at your job. We have an opening up here. Would you like to come work with me? So network, just out of the blue, called me. And yes, it's a fantastic work-life balance. It's low stress. And I work 3-4 days a week, full-time. I'm able to get coverage, come here and do talks, go back. I can get to work at 5 a.m., do my work and leave so I can be home to see my kids in the afternoon. So work-life balance is crucial, I think, in your long-term happiness with your career and overall happiness. So make sure to take that into account when you're deciding what you want to do. Work-life balance, very important. Again, I'm skipping over a lot of points, but how am I doing on
About 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes, I think. Right, just get to what I do. Okay. So, this is what I do. I'm an interventional radiologist. I do minimally invasive surgeries using imaging guidance. So we're trained in interpretation of medical imaging, so ultrasound, x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, and we use what we know in interpreting those images to do minimally invasive surgeries. So we perform through a needle hole or a small nick in the skin. I'm not making any incisions. There's much less recovery time, much less pain. It's the least invasive method of intervention in medicine. Faster recovery time, shorter hospital stays, and we can precisely target the tissues that we need to treat. I'm not cutting through a bunch of stuff to get to where I need to go. I'm going directly to it and affecting change there. How do I, or where do I make those changes? Well, in almost every organ system in the body. I don't just deal with liver, I don't just deal with stomach. I go through, all of those different structures, and I use them as a conduit to affect change. So let's say you have a tumor in your liver. I can go through the arteries directly to that tumor, give the chemotherapy, and kill it without making you systemically sick. Don't lose your hair, don't vomit, and that tumor hopefully is killed. Other things we can do, we can navigate through the arteries and veins in your body. If they're narrow, we can open them up. If they're too open, we can close them down. If you have a mass in your lung, we can go in and biopsy it. There's a number of different things we can do. If you have a stroke, what I was doing in private practice is if you had a stroke and you'd be paralyzed from that stroke, if we could catch you in a sufficient window, I could go up all the way up into your brain, into the artery that was clogged by that stroke, and either use a little corkscrew or vacuum cleaner and pull out that clot, so that hopefully the blood flow goes back to your brain and your stroke is reversed. Worked pretty well. So the tools that we use, I won't bore you and have your eyes glaze over with this, but we use a lot of needles. Needles are scary, I hate them, but I have to use them, that's my job. We biopsy with needles. We can ablate, which means if you have a tumor, I can put it in there and use either RF energy or microwave energy to cook the tumor, get rid of the tumor, and hopefully it doesn't grow back. I can also make an ice ball, so I can either crank up the heat or crank up the cold and make an ice ball to kill that tumor. Minimal collateral damage to adjacent tissue. These are catheters, these are small plastic tubes that I use to manipulate through the body, whether it's in the arteries and veins or whether in the other spaces like your bile ducts or your kidneys. And I can navigate, and each one of these has a different purpose. And if I don't have one that has a specific purpose and shape that I need, I make it. So they kind of, refer to us as MacGyver, which I don't know if you guys even know who that is. But some of us do, where we have to make a lot of our own tools because they just don't exist yet. Some other things we do, we use these wires, and we have different shape wires, different texture wires, and that allows us to get to different places in the body. You have to remember, I'm working 3 feet away from the actual patient, essentially, and so I have to use these wires to get to where I'm going. If the artery is closed, I can put this device in, it's called an angioplasty balloon, and I blow up the balloon and I can leave a stent, which is a small little metal cage. Here's what our interventional radiology suites look like. This is the one at Mass General. And when I was putting together this slide, it seems like something out of Star Trek. This is where we see what's going on. The patient lays here, the x-rays go through here into this detector. It shows up on the screen here. This is what it looks like in the control room. This is the room at Stanford. These move around the patient. These are the C-arms, and then the images show up here. This is what this is a combined unit with a CT scanner and a fluoroscopy unit where we can image the patient at the same time. And then this is what I like to think I look like when I do my work. Looks pretty cool and fancy. It's usually a little bloodier, but the patient is down here, all the way down here under the C-arm. I'm about 3 feet away. I'm working down here with my different tools, and everything I'm doing is up on this screen. So I have very minimal interaction and actually looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking up at the screen the whole time and manipulating my tools. So the tools I'm using are generally a little bit thicker than the width of a hair, and this is up in someone's brain that I'm starting from someone's groin to get there. So I'm navigating all the way up and into your brain with these tiny little tools. This is a cerebral angiogram, and this is an image from, let's say we were taking out a stroke. You would go up there and take out the clot from someone's brain. Here's a couple more images. Here's an angiogram. You inject contrast and you take pictures of the arteries. Sometimes in trauma they're leaking. You put something in there to plug it up. Here's a lung mass, we put a needle in, we take a biopsy of it. You have a compression fracture in your spine, your bone density reduces. When you get older, we go in, we put a balloon in, we put some cement in, basically fix your spine. Or if your arteries are closed from smoking, diabetes, eating horribly your entire life, then we go in and balloon it open. So I'm just kind of closing up with some words of wisdom. When making this, I realized this blue circle is way too big. This was a slide that the dean of admissions, the very first lecture we got in med school, very first thing he said, didn't introduce himself, didn't say, he just walked in the room, put this up. And he said, this is how much you know. Pretty straightforward. This is how much you know you don't know. This is how much you don't know you don't know. So it kind of turns your brain into a little bit of a Mobius strip there. You have no idea how much you don't know. So ahead of you in life is lifelong learning, and it reminds you to keep humble, because no matter how much you think you know, or you think you're an expert in something, there's always someone who knows more, and there's always more out there to learn. So this always stuck with me. This is how much you know, this is how much you know you don't know, and this is how much you don't know you don't know. And then a couple other kind of pseudo-platitudes. If you have feathers, then fly. Know yourself. Know what you're good at. Doesn't mean, if you're good at math, doesn't mean you can't be a doctor. If you aren't good at interpersonal skills, well, you can be a pathologist. You can still be a doctor. Not anything against pathologists. But if you have feathers, then fly. Know yourself. Know what you're good at. Know how to take advantage of it. Recommended books. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Sounds really manipulative. It's not. It's a really, really, really good book. I wish I had read it sooner. I wish I had read it in middle school, and I've reread it probably 10 times. It's the only book on my shelf that has flags and dog ears and highlighting. Read it, reread it, take it on vacation, read it on a plane, read it, and put your phone down and read it. It's worth spending a day and a half to read. Simple advice: save and invest early. Start now. My mom started with me at the kitchen table. She said, "What do you like eating?" I said, "Chunking egg rolls." She's like, "Okay, let's look and see who makes that. Let's buy some stock." I must have been 5. What hotels do you like? Hilton. Hey, buy Hilton stock. And start early, because everyone always says, Albert Einstein says this. Who knows if he did or didn't? But compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. The earlier you save, the better. So start saving, start investing. Wear sunscreen. I really wish I had taken that advice a long time ago. Sun really damages your skin. Wear sunscreen. Seems simple, just do it. Networking. This is one of the most important things. Network, and it's about what you know. It's about who you know, and it's about what you know about who you know. So, about what you know. You have to be good. You have to be able to back up what people vouch for. So you have to put the time in, you have to put the effort in, you have to be back up. They have to be able to vouch for you, and you have to be able to deliver if they're going to vouch for you. Who you know. Get out there, meet people. It's hard, because I'm kind of an introvert. You wouldn't know it, because I'm kind of spewing really fast here, but it's sometimes a little bit of a struggle for me to meet people and make friends. But do it, because it's useful, as you can tell from my story. And then what you know about who you know. If you know a bunch of people, but you have no idea how they're useful, it's not going to help you. If you don't remember that your friend Steve's aunt is CEO of MGM, then it's not going to be of any good to you. So know about who you know. And that also helps you, get interested in people, and that'll build your network. Because the more interested you are in them, the more interested they'll be in you. And you may get a call from them, being part of their network, asking you to be involved, because they say, okay, we have this spot we need filled. Who do we know that's good? And they'll call you out of the blue and pull you in. So, network now. And then most importantly, and this is something I used to close every one of the essays that I wrote for anything. Work hard for what you want. Pretty self-explanatory. Value what you have. Be grateful, be thankful, be humble. And then the most meaningful competition is with your own potential. And read that again. The most meaningful competition is with your own potential. If you decide to go into medicine, if you decide to go into anything else, you're going to be up against a lot of people. And it doesn't matter who they are, what they know. If you're doing your best and you're competing against what you feel is your potential, you'll succeed. So most meaningful competitions with your own potential. And one other thing I didn't include on the slides is I never appreciated and realized how well Poly prepared me. I got to college, as I said, I wasn't an academic standout from Poly, but I crushed it in college. I was not a 4.0 student here. In college, I was a 4.0 student until my last quarter. I was top 3 in every one of my classes in college, and that was because Poly prepares you. You may come out and you're like, I don't know, what did Poly prepare me for? Poly prepared you to learn. You are an expert at learning, assimilating and communicating and processing, and that's what you get from coming through here. You are an expert at learning, and that will serve you very, very well, and you don't even realize how head and shoulders, again, be humble, but how head and shoulders above other people you are with the training and the experience you get from coming through here. So be thankful, be humble, value what you have, and compete with your own potential. So, I know I talked fast and I kind of rambled on this stuff.
That's okay. I know you guys have to head to class in just a couple minutes, but does anyone have a quick question for Dr. Copelan?
Still don't understand what I do? Most people in medicine don't know what I do.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have kids. How
Yes.
did you manage your education and family life?
So I put them off. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So they're really, really young. And I've been at Kaiser for now 9 years. So during the training, it was tough to, even think about having a family. But a lot of my colleagues did. There's some of the people I work with that have 15 and 20-year-olds, right now that have their kids in college or have their kids in med school, and it's challenging. Kim Wyckoff-Bickle would be able to speak to that because she had her kids in residency, if I remember correctly. We did residency together. It's a whole nother level of difficult. But I think you just have to, really be a good team with your partner and work through it. And I know some of my friends who had kids there, they would study very late at night after their kids went to bed, or they'd get up very, very early. And that's kind of what I do. I was up at 4:30 this morning. I was at work at 5 to knock my work out so that I can be here, go back to work, knock a little more work out, and then be home so I can see my kids. But it's a work-life balance, and you have to kind of figure out where your priorities sit. And sometimes you have to shave a little bit off of work to save some for sort of family. I don't know if I answered your question all that well. I didn't have a week to prepare for it, but yeah, it's tough. And I think some of my colleagues who have kids would be able to solve that.